West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
I bet you remember this photo, this crazy photo. This photo, remember this? This photo was taken on Donald Trump's very first foreign trip of his presidency. His first foreign trip was to Saudi Arabia. That's the king of Saudi Arabia in the middle there, the guy in yellow who looks surprised. Again, this was Trump's very first foreign visit as president. No other American president ever made Saudi Arabia their first foreign trip, but Trump did. And that kind of set the tone for a lot of really unusual favors and special treatment for Saudi Arabia during Trump's one beleaguered term in office. Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner was at the helm of most of those decisions, most of that special treatment. Mr. Kushner himself made at least 3 trips to Saudi Arabia just during Trump's first year in office. And I say it was at least 3 because we don't know about all his trips, maybe. Of those 3, one of them, Kushner flew there secretly. We didn't learn about it until after he was back, long after it was over. That was the trip that reportedly included several nights where Jared Kushner and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, he goes by MBS, Jared and MBS reportedly stayed up till 4 in the morning, swapping stories and planning strategy, end quote. Shortly after Jared Kushner got back from that trip, the Saudi Crown Prince, MBS, rounded up literally hundreds of members of the royal family and other rich Saudis and basically jailed them, including torturing some of them, in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Riyadh, until lots of them were forced to give up billions of dollars and any claims to power they might have. And MBS didn't just have tacit support from the Trump White House for that bizarre crackdown. President Trump explicitly tweeted his approval of it. Trump also, incredibly, supported Saudi Arabia's weird economic blockade of their neighbor, Qatar, even though Qatar is a staunch U.S. ally and they host a gigantic U.S. military base that houses 10,000 American troops. Saudi Arabia launched this big blockade of Qatar, and Trump said, okay, I'm on the Saudis' side. Really? Trump even bent over backwards to prevent Saudi Arabia's crown prince after the murder and dismemberment of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, an operation that U.S. intelligence concluded was personally approved by MBS himself. Trump later told journalist Bob Woodward about MBS, quote, I saved his bass. Quote, I was able to get Congress to leave him alone. I was able to get them to stop. Why? Why did you do that? It was so strange and so blatant. Why is the United States government doing this? Why is our government going out of their way, not just to excuse and paper over, but to really prop up this guy? How does this work? While the Trump administration was giving the Saudi crown prince everything he wanted and more, Trump's Treasury Secretary, the guy in charge of money for the Trump administration, Steven Mnuchin, he kept making ever more frequent trips to go see MBS, even after the Jamal Khashoggi murder. In fact, in the very last days of the Trump administration, Mnuchin took one last taxpayer-funded overseas junket to go visit Saudi Arabia. He had to cut that trip short because of the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. But not too short. Even after that, he stretched it out a couple more days because he wanted to squeeze in one last meeting with MBS. Well, now we know just how well all that hard work paid off. The New York Times is reporting now that just 6 months after Trump left office, Saudi Arabia gave Steven Mnuchin $1 billion. Saudi Arabia put $1 billion into a brand new investment fund created by Mr. Mnuchin. That money came out of a Saudi government fund controlled by MBS. I mean, services rendered, right? $1 billion for a job well done when you were a public official serving in the Trump administration. But here's the thing. Steven Mnuchin, the money guy from Trump's cabinet, yes, he got $1 billion from the Saudis 6 months after leaving office. But we now know that at about the same time, the Saudis gave $2 billion to Jared, to Trump's son-in-law and White House senior advisor, Jared Kushner. According to this new reporting from the New York Times, MBS gave this $2 billion to Jared Kushner's new investment venture, despite all the advisors for the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund advising against giving Jared the money. The Saudi advisors who oversee the fund looked at Jared's proposal, and according to internal documents obtained by the New York Times, their response was basically, yeah, why would we invest in this? Jared Kushner has no experience in this kind of investing. None. Also, there are no other investors in this thing at all besides us. And our due diligence on their operations, quote, shows that they are unsatisfactory in all aspects. In all aspects. That said, MBS staffers at the Saudi fund told these advisors, don't worry, we've told them that after the first $500 million, they really have to hire some people who know what they're doing before they get the other $1.5 billion. After that, fingers crossed they'll figure out how to manage the other $1.5 billion we're giving them. But we'll condition the first $500 million on them actually setting up a company that hires some people who know how to do what Jared is asking us for this money for. I mean, at least with Steven Mnuchin, he was technically an investor. He had been the Treasury Secretary. I mean, he had a money-shaped hole in which you could insert $1 billion, right? He was like a money guy. But Jared Kushner, he ran his dad's real estate firm for a while when it got into money trouble. I mean, with Mnuchin, the deal still stinks to high heaven, but on paper, at least, he kind of makes sense as a place for the Saudi government to park some money, maybe? The Saudi government, though, then gave Jared Kushner twice as much money on more favorable terms on the vague hope that Jared will eventually hire people to do the actual work of, managing their investment. Why was Jared worth twice as much as the $1 billion they gave Mnuchin? Well, presumably, in his case, it's not just services rendered, but services to be rendered. There's always the prospect that Donald Trump might be president again. Who knows if Trump would pick the same cabinet secretaries again? Who knows if Steven Mnuchin would get the job back again? But he'll presumably have the same son-in-law. So maybe it's payment for services rendered and also services to come. When one of the skeptical Saudi advisors asked why they couldn't at least cut back the amount they were giving Jared, MBS's staff replied that the whole point was to, quote, form a strategic relationship with this new fund and its founder, Jared Kushner. And cutting back the $2 billion stake they were giving him could screw that up. The Saudi government under MBS giving Jared Kushner $2 billion really does look like not just payment for services rendered, but also a down payment for services expected. If you had to explain corruption, if you had to explain being compromised by a foreign power to like a 7-year-old, this would be a good coloring book to start with. What are we as a country supposed to do about a situation like this?
It is Tuesday, the 12th of April of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. And what a day for it. Boy, winter has come back roaring. Yeah, we've got a bit of snow in the hills that surround the mothership. And expecting snow flurries later on today. And I should add, forecast is snow and rain for the rest of the week. And then we're going to have copious amounts of water falling from the sky next week. And I got to tell you, I consider that to be good. Yeah, April showers with a few snow flurries. Bring May flowers and peonies if you want to keep the alliterative thing going. Yeah, thing. What's a thing? I'll tell you what a thing is. It's what it is in the morning when you've only had not quite the minimum daily requirement of coffee. How are you doing out there? Yeah, weird, terrible news coming in over the transom, of course. You will probably have heard of the shooting, explosion, finding of explosive devices undetonated, fortunately, on the subway at the Brooklyn platform. I guess numbers that I know of before I put myself in the bubble, you can only take in so much information, and then you got to say, okay, I'm going to report on what I got. 13 injured, 5 shot? And I hate thinking that the people who were shot, I don't know if that conveys the severity of their injuries. Let's just put it that way. Considering the way that firearms and the ammunition that goes into them then comes out at a really high rate of speed. So much of a high rate of speed, it's burning. And then it fragments inside of you, and that's what we use now, and everybody says, yeah, it's my constitutional right to do that. Reports from, now, of course, I'm getting this second, third hand, so that means you're getting it fourth, so don't take my word on this, but MSNBC did report one of the local journalists, I don't know if it was the New York Daily News, some local paper there in Gotham. Is Brooklyn Gotham? Well, I meant it in terms of the metropolitan area that is New York City, which is quite big. Of course, this platform is 20 minutes ride to get down to Manhattan. So it's, close enough, not too close. Anyway, came onto the platform apparently dressed in an MTA uniform, and then sounds like he tossed a flashbang grenade and then started firing. So I have no idea what this is about. It's not good how anybody can get grenades, let alone, these high-powered weapons that everybody thinks that they can have an armory in their own garage now. And you don't even have to lock it up. All right. This is the America I guess we chose to live in. They use representative democracy against us to destroy representative democracy. Can't we just punch the Nazis? I know that's, devolving into such terrible, terrible physicality. You know what? It can be rhetorical also. That's how I get around it, like they do. It's a rhetorical flourish. You can punch them by taking their money away. Or how about this? Exposing where their money is coming from. How is it that they've been able to manipulate the laws that we cannot tell who is buying who off? Who does that? I'll tell you who does that. Mobsters do that. It's about time we wrapped our heads around the fact that these uber-rich GOP maggot types are mobsters. They're foot soldiers. They're capos at the least. The Nazi regime would have never existed without the Burgermeisters, and we have a bunch of Burgermeister billionaires thinking that they know the secrets of the universe by dint of the fact that they were able to accumulate vast sums of money by intimidating other people. My God, I'm tired of it. Punch the effing Nazis. And I got to tell you, it's not enough just to punch the Nazis if we're going to have this rhetorical flourish going on. After you punch the Nazi, you have to punch them again. Nazis are like rust. Rust never sleeps. It's corrosive. It just keeps doing its thing of destruction. And you got to keep rubbing it and rubbing it and rubbing it out. It keeps coming back. You got to rub it out. If we're going to maintain the ship of state, we might as well learn how to get rid of the barnacles on our own. Can't always hire someone to do it, you know. Okay, I'm fairly livid because it was so great to have Rachel back. She's such a great storyteller. She really is. The arc in which she is able to convey the message is quite stellar, as we know. But I guess we'll get her one day a week. So we'll get her all of this week, and then it's in May. It's one day a week. Mondays. How dare she? Mondays is when Monday Night Football comes on. And we might be interested in that by then. We never know. Of course, MSNBC does have her reprised here on the West Coast at our 9 o'clock hour. But sometimes it's nice to see it live. Or in its original hour block. Anyway, Mnuchin getting $1 billion from the Saudis is bad enough. Jared, totally unqualified, and what does he how much did he owe on that apocalyptic high rise there, 666 Fifth Avenue, I think it was. Who would ever want to get a place in that place? I don't know. Anyway, didn't he own like $1 billion? Wow. So now he penned a deal for $2 billion. So, he pays off I think actually he had it paid off with some sort of Emirate money or Saudi money. So now he's using part of this to pay back the loan that was floated to him in the first place. Could be. And then another bill to pocket. Yeah. So what is what is our government going to do about that? I'll tell you what they're going to do about it. Jim Jordan was on the horn today talking about they discovered that Hunter made a deal with the Chinese for, I think he said, $5.6 billion. I don't know. Oh, Jared signed a thing for $2 billion with the Saudis. We'll just say 5.6. 5.63. Sounds like some weird score in wrestling, Jimbo. All right. That's what's going to happen. All right. Hunter Biden's investigation on his taxes are heating up. Isn't it weird that we hear about that investigation? But apparently there's no leaks coming, about the Trump investigation, because it makes you wonder if there is one. We hear all these little tidbits about Hunter in a very similar fashion in the way that we used to hear it about Hillary, isn't it? Little tidbit here at an appropriate time, a little tidbit there at an appropriate time. It was so appropriate times. I put in a trademark for the term convenient with a capital C and the trademark symbol. Can't have that trademarked unless you actually have something that denotes it as being special. And so I put the trademark symbol on it, and I'm going to trademark convenient, because it can be attributed to Putin or any Putin wannabe. What is our government going to do about it? We'll go after the vice president's kid for stuff that he did when the vice president was even vice president. I don't know of Hunter running an equity firm and running it into the ground? Is Hunter a slumlord who owed a bunch of money on his slumlord properties because he couldn't pay them off because they're slums? And he didn't want to improve them and keep the people there and raise them up and have noblesse oblige. No. He's a slumlord. He's an eviction artist. He's just like Hannity. Oh, did you know that Hannity is a slumlord also? Yeah. It's an affliction. Whatever kind of power and ways to get money in the most, slimy way possible. The most predatory way possible. It's almost a prerequisite. You got to do that to really rise to the levels of Republican hierarchy as you can. No one was raised in Republican hierarchy by being a nice guy or gal. Speaking of gals, did you see Marsha Blackburn's new hairstyle? Now, I actually think it was retouched. I think it's like a fake photo because it looks like Donald Trump's hair, the way that he kind of combs it back over, like a big sweep there, comb it back over there. I think it's a retouched photo. I need to look again because I saw it last night and I don't know, maybe it came out of the Babylon Bee. I don't think it was out of the Onion, but it could have been. But it would be just great if she did get a Donald Trump haircut, like a little short thing with Donald's like little sweep, and the same kind of coloring too. That's why I thought it was retouched. It's got to be a retouched photo. It just has to be. So these mornings, sometimes I am up much too late at night now. It's really disturbing. Part of the reason is that there's so much to do. And decay in life is a worrisome event. And I'm not talking about ourselves. I'm talking about our loved ones. And I don't know. I think we can all sort of feel what it means to take care of our parents and the epiphanies that occurred during that time of care and how it might soften a heart, though I know of some who get really pissed off. I can't stand this person. They're so terrible. I don't know. I think the first epiphany I had when my son was born, and I compared my age to my parents' age at that same similar time, and it gave me a much better appreciation what they were going through. Just saying. Sort of gives you a view on life that seems like, what? Is that what it means? Oh, my God. No, any kind of complaints I might have about parenthood was mitigated by the fact that I became a parent and I knew exactly then what they were going through. Of course, parenting goes in a pendulum, of course. I mean, some parents are overly authoritarian, and then oftentimes those kids will be less authoritarian. We'll say permissive. And then those kids who were raised by the permissive parents, they want a little bit more order in their lives. Like, I'm going to let my kid join ROTC. What? You're going to let your kid be in ROTC? No, over my dead body. And then next thing you know, everybody's like going, oh, yeah, hey, military people, they're pure as driven snow. They can do anything and it's okay. And they do. And I guess it's okay. Anyway, my parents weren't necessarily permissive. And when I look back on it, early on, I'll just confess my birth father was quite abusive. Though even he changed. I mean, Does one hold a grudge? Well, I don't know. He alcohol and whatever, hormones, all of that, I think, came into play because he was still a young guy, too, trying to figure it out, and his body, hormones raging. Is not an excuse for putting my mom in the hospital for the better part of a year the last time. Okay. But we'll just set that aside because, well, even then, there was enough support because my paternal grandmother, yeah, she was strict, but she was very loving, too. So, yeah, it was kind of balanced out in that. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that when my dad became our dad, Jackson Putnam, and he adopted us and we got his name and lineage and all of that, he actually had a good balance between being stern when he had to and letting kids figure it out themselves. You know, sometimes you got to bruise a knee. And you might try to direct them into activities in which those bruised knees don't occur so often. But you got to walk a fine line because you might have some, I don't know, preposterous boy thinking that they can do anything they want whenever they want. And they will. And they did. and that they was me. Anyway, I saw how other kids in school just had problems with their upbringing. And it was actually, I felt so sorry for my classmates that I thought I had to make up bad stuff about my family just so I could fit in. Because we could go to our parents and talk to them about anything. And that's exactly how I treated my son. My parents didn't really treat us as like kids. They didn't talk down to us as kids. There wasn't this idea, well, there's only proper vocabulary for a certain age of kid. No, the kid will never learn the word unless they hear it. Okay? They can learn it by osmosis, or you can try to explain it to them. But, you know, I mean, speaking over the kid's head so they don't understand is one thing. But the increasing use of vocabulary as if you're treating your kid like an equal and an adult, which is okay. Because, you know, you still have to direct them in some fashion. But I never felt we were talked down upon. And I didn't treat my son in that way. And he never treated his kids either that way. So it was sort of disconcerting because I got to tell you, every single one of my friends seemed to have problems with their upbringing. And though I came originally from an abusive background, let's be clear. I mean, alcohol and physical abuse, that sucked. But it seemed like to be some kind of pervasive evil that permeated, I know that seems redundant, is redundant, our whole society, because my classmates, almost to a T, had issues about their upbringing. And, you know, as I mentioned, when Mom married our dad and we became Putnams, I just didn't get that. I mean, there was no physical abuse in our family. Oh, yeah, maybe I would think the professorial lectures, I always wanted to elevate that to some sort of high crime and misdemeanor. How dare you? I'll tell you this. When my dad would have to dress me down on a Saturday morning while he graded blue books, meaning that he would read a blue book and grade it and redline it and correct, you know, for the grammar and whatever. And then in between blue books, he'd light into me. And it wasn't any type of breaking you down. But you had to stand there. You couldn't, like, fidget. There was no, like, I got to go to the bathroom. You know, any form of avoidance he wouldn't let you utilize. So, I got to say, it prepared me for these weird self-help cults like Est and the Forum, which was Est.2. That became the Forum. Never got into LifeSpring, but I knew some people in the Bay Area that did. I'm just saying that, in this benign fashion of just listening, you had to listen to your dad on a Saturday morning. It would last for a good, sometimes 3 hours. I'm going to tell you, 9 to noon. Then you got to go and do what you want. Sometimes I was just, sitting down watching baseball. Sometimes. Anyway, I think that we have an issue in our society with the way we parent our children, and I got to tell you, I know it's not by party delineation, but I know a lot of repressive households that are not democratic. Let's just put it that way. Okay? I know that they exist, and there's everybody is able to synthesize whatever it is, whatever turmoil it is in their life, and then come out of it. But there's a lot of grooming, shall we say, on a particular side, not to be loving good neighbors, but to be little Nazis. So I'm all ready for identifying the groomers and doing something about it. Yeah. And maybe not allowing Nazi groomers become part of our school boards. Maybe we could start there, since they've decided the school board is their front line. Why is that familiar? Because it happened in a particular Teutonic state in the 20s and 30s. Oh my, look at the time. Well, I didn't mean to go off as much as I have, but we might as well let you in on the curated show that we did take time to curate. So, of course, at the top, Kushner was able to secure that $2 billion investment from the Saudis, despite lacking the qualifications to handle such an investment. He failed the background check. But MSB said, or MBS said, look, we joked about that Washington Post journalist. Yeah. It's nothing to lose your head over, fellas. Give him the money. And they did. Okay, on the rest of the menu, the National Urban League released its annual report on the state of Black America, and its findings are grim. California utility Pacific Gas and Electric will pay a measly $55 million to avoid criminal prosecution for 2 massive wildfires. Yeah, you can buy your way out of a criminal prosecution. Because I guess corporations are people, my friend, and the rest of us must be corporations because we can't do that. And the Georgia elections lawsuit backed by Stacy Abrams goes to a bench trial. Yeah, a judge. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Israeli spyware maker NSO Group turned to the U.S. Supreme Court for immunity in the WhatsApp lawsuit. And I think there's probably 5, maybe 6 justices that might say, oh, yeah, let's just let a private corporation claim state secrets like they're a nation unto themselves. All right, we'll see where that goes. Oh, and Joe Biden urged in India's Narendra Modi not to accelerate the buying of Russian oil. Before the invasion, Modi wasn't buying that much Russian oil, and then suddenly after, he started to. Why is that? We'll find out. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Now, I should mention Kelly does live in New York, and though I believe she's still in Manhattan in terms of her domicile space, I don't know where she's working, so hopefully she's not impacted by this terrible event in Brooklyn. But I want to also reiterate that Kelly will be at Netroots Nation this year. This is the first time that an in-person meeting at Netroots Nation has occurred because of the pandemic in 2 years. So look forward to Kelly's interviews and other events that she will be covering at Netroots Nation, and we'll have those in various formats for your various formatting pleasure, indeed. So thank you, Kelly, for everything that you do. If you would look across the page from that chat room link that's near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com to the left, there is the link to our Patreon page, and yes, we need money. I'm not going to make a very long appeal for it, but if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, even though that's getting expensive, I'm sorry, but if you could afford to do that and send those funds our way once a month, it really helps. And I won't go into it at this point, but it has helped us in these past 11 years. And thank you for your generosity, and thank you to those of you in the future who will consider helping us out. Thank you. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. Then get that posted up, hopefully before showtime, on Twitter and other social media platforms. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, wherever podcasts can be found. And, of course, not only West Coast Cookbook, but the whole Netroots Radio library, the Deep Archive, can be found at the Internet Archive at archive.org. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Michael Warren out of the Associated Press. The National Urban League released its annual report on the state of Black America yesterday, late, and its findings are grim. This year's Equality Index shows black people still get only 73.9% of the American pie white people enjoy. While black people have made economic and health gains, they've slipped farther behind whites in education, social justice, and civic engagements since this index was launched in 2005. A compendium of average outcomes by race in many aspects of life. It shows just how hard it is for people of color to overcome systemic racism, the Civil Rights Organization says. These numbers change so little and so slowly. What it tells me is that this institutional disparity based on race seems to be built into American society. Oh, you're talking about critical race theory now, aren't you? And that was National Urban League President Mark Morial said in an interview. The index shows not only that median household income for black people at $43,862 is 37% less than that of white people at $69,823. Black people are also less likely to benefit from home ownership, the engine of generational wealth in America. Census data shows black couples are more than twice as likely as whites to be denied a mortgage or a home improvement loan, which leads to just 59% of the median home equity white households have and just 13% of their wealth. Well, you know, a workaround is just to hire white people to go and stand in as your proxies. That way you can get a good appraisal if you're selling, and you can get a good price when you're buying. Olga R. Rodriguez and Mike Litke of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Pacific Gas and Electric, the nation's largest utility, has agreed to pay more than $55 million to avoid criminal prosecution for two major wildfires sparked by its aging Northern California power lines and submit to 5 years of oversight in an attempt to prevent more deadly blazes. Did you know they went bankrupt a couple of times to prevent paying any fines at all? And they got away. I got to tell you, $55 million is measly. And of course, they're going to pass it on to the ratepayer. The company did not acknowledge any wrongdoing in this settlement announced on yesterday, with prosecutors in 6 counties ravaged by last year's Dixie Fire and the 2019 Kincaid Fire. The utility still faces criminal charges for a 2020 wildfire in Shasta County that killed 4 people. Brumback of the AP brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A lawyer representing critics of Georgia's election system said state officials have erected a series of roadblocks to voting through their policies and practices. An attorney for the state countered that the critics are trying to prove democracy failed the state, but they lack the evidence to prove it. The statements came yesterday Monday as a trial got underway in a federal lawsuit that initially called for a broad overhaul of Georgia's election system. The scope of the suit was considerably narrowed when some allegations were addressed by changes in state law and others were dismissed by the court. The lawsuit was filed in 2018 by Fair Fight Action, an organization founded by voting rights activist and Democratic candidate for governor of Georgia, Stacy Abrams, just weeks after Abrams narrowly lost her first bid for governor. Oh, you remember why? Because the AG who was running for governor controlled how the votes would be. How nice. Or wasn't he already governor and then was also the AG? It was some sort of weird old boys network type of deal. The bench trial, which means there's no jury, is being presided over by U.S. District Judge Steve Jones and is expected to last 4 or 5 weeks. Jones has said he does not expect to rule before the state's May 24th primary. Well. That brings us to our break, and why don't we get to our break? It's going to be abbreviated, but when we get back from that break, we will go through a little bit of weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. When you look up at the Milky Way, you're gazing at the galactic equivalent of Rome, a metropolis of stars with layers upon layers of history, just like the Eternal City. So says the astronomer Hans Walter Rix.
There were glory days, there were disasters, And all of these things kind of happen in the life of galaxies. And the Milky Way is just the one galaxy we can look at star by star. And so you can kind of see individual episodes in actual detail.
Now Rix and a colleague at the Max Planck Institute for Astronomy in Germany have indeed gone star by star, determining the ages of nearly 250,000 stars in the Milky Way. That work has allowed them to reconstruct some of the major life events in the galaxy's evolution over its 13 billion years of existence.
What it showed is that indeed the youth and childhood of the Milky Way was turbulent, but actually afterwards we've lived an enormously sheltered life compared to most other galaxies. Gas drizzled in, and the suburbs grew peacefully and sprawled.
The astronomers say that the galaxy's thick disk began to form around 13 billion years ago, just 800 million years after the Big Bang. Then, around 11 billion years ago, a cataclysmic collision occurred. The Gaia Enceladus satellite galaxy crashed into the Milky Way.
And just at the same time, there was a huge burst of star formation, or a large increase of star formation in our own Milky Way. And that suggests, doesn't prove, that the perturbance that this infalling satellite created caused a lot of the gas that was in our Milky Way to form stars.
The details are in the journal Nature. Now, none of this is a total surprise. People have simulated the Milky Way's formation before.
So I would say really what our work has done is it just shows it clearly. A long suspected picture is coming into focus.
In other words, this work lays out a more definitive playbill of the acts in this galactic drama. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Welcome to 60-Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. By the time Abraham Lincoln arrived in Washington, D.C. for his inauguration on March 4, 1861, 7 slave states had seceded from the United States to form the Confederate States of America. President Lincoln's first inaugural address offered reconciliation to states that had left the Union to form the Confederate States of America, and warned of dire consequences if they persisted in secession. He claimed the Union was perpetual and that no state, upon its own mere motion, can lawfully get out of the Union. And he pledged to faithfully carry out the declared purpose of the Union that it will constitutionally defend and maintain itself. Nearly 6 weeks later, from April 12th to 14th, 1861, the Civil War began when Confederate soldiers attacked and forced the surrender of federal forces at Fort Sumter in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. 4 more slave states joined the Confederacy. President Lincoln responded forcefully to oppose insurrection and to fulfill his oath of office to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. That's all for today's podcast. 60-Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
Russia's disinformation campaign is winning inside Russia.
Listen up. This matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
After invading Ukraine, Vladimir Putin shut down the one radio station and the one television station that had provided a platform for those who did not hew the government line. He severed access to Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and most recently, Instagram. And ominously and effectively, Putin made it a crime to in any way contradict the government's version of the government or his war, an offense punishable by 15 years in prison. Indeed, it is a violation of this new state security law to refer to Putin's war as a war or as an invasion instead of a special military operation. Meanwhile, Russia's state media is manufacturing lies, including that Ukraine is manufacturing chemical and biological weapons to use against Russia. The disparity, the dissonance between reality, between what the rest of the world understands Russia is doing in the Ukraine and what Russian people understand is happening, should make us appreciate yet again the singular importance of freedom of the press, the need for accuracy, and the dangers of propaganda. We thank all the brave reporters who are providing us all with facts.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union because freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. There are some songs that stand at the core of the labor movement. Year after year, these songs ring out on picket lines, at labor rallies, and in union halls across the world. These songs inspire and build solidarity between workers. Undoubtedly, Which Side Are You On is one of those songs. On this day in labor history, the year was 1900. Today, we celebrate the birthday of Florence Reese, the author of Which Side Are You On's iconic labor lyrics. She was born in Tennessee, the daughter of a coal miner. During the 1930s, her husband Sam was an organizer for the United Mine Workers in Harlan County, Kentucky. In what came to be known as the Harlan County Wars, the battle for Union recognition waged on for nearly a decade. Often, violent skirmishes broke out between striking miners and federal troops, and the mine owners hired guns. Legend has it that one fateful day in 1931, deputies were dispatched to kill Sam Reese. He escaped just in the nick of time. But Florence and her children were terrorized as the deputies illegally searched and ransacked their home. When the deputies left, an angry Florence ripped the calendar off the kitchen wall and on it wrote the lyrics to Which Side Are You On? Folk singer Pete Seeger heard the song, and in 1941 he recorded it with his group, the Almanac Singers. It entered into the lexicon of labor anthems. Then, in 1976, Florence appeared in the Oscar-winning documentary Harlan County, USA. The documentary told the story of a 1970s coal strike. In it, Florence sang her song, and the lyrics provided a powerful addition to the film. Since then, many more artists have covered versions of the song, including Annie DeFranco, Natalie Merchant, and this version by the Dropkick Murphys.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We normally begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America. But I did give you an abbreviated forecast earlier that we're going to have a snowy mix of rain and snow, which is a snowy mix today and through the rest of the week into next week, which will then turn into heavy showers. Okay, we'll look forward to that, but let us now go to weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 64 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 71 and sunny. Rome is 66 and sunny. Kyiv is 48 and cloudy. Kabul is 60 degrees and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 76 and fair. Tokyo is 64 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 65 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 44 degrees and sunny. And New York, New York is 52 degrees Fahrenheit with rain. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that crowdsources from around the world. Joseph Fetterman of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Israeli spyware maker NSO Group is turning to the U.S. Supreme Court as it seeks to head off a high-profile lawsuit filed by the WhatsApp messaging service. In a filing to the Supreme Court, NSO said it should be recognized as a foreign government agent and therefore be entitled to immunity under U.S. law limiting lawsuits against foreign countries. The request appeals a pair of earlier federal court rulings that rejected similar arguments by the Israeli company. WhatsApp parent Facebook, now called Meta Platforms, Inc., sued NSO in 2019 for targeting some 1,400 users of its encrypted messaging service with highly sophisticated spyware. It is trying to block NSO from Facebook platforms and servers and seeks unspecified damages. Granting sovereign immunity to NSO would greatly hinder WhatsApp's case. It also could provide protection from a potentially risky discovery process that could reveal its customers and technological secrets. NSO is seeking to have the entire case dismissed.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Josh Boak, Fatima Hussein, and Ashok Sharma of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. President Joe Biden asked India's Narendra Modi not to accelerate the buying of Russian oil as the U.S. and other nations try to cut off Moscow's energy income following the invasion of Ukraine. The Indian Prime Minister made no public commitment to refrain from Russian oil, a source of tension with the U.S. Meeting by video call, Biden told Modi that the U.S. could help India diversify its sources of energy. According to Press Secretary Jen Psaki, even though India receives little of its oil from Russia, it stepped up recently with a major purchase as other democracies are trying to isolate Russian President Vladimir Putin. At a separate State Department news conference with Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the Indian Foreign Minister pointedly suggested that Europe, not India, be the focus of Washington's concern about energy purchases from Russia. I suspect, looking at the figures, probably our total purchases for the month would be less than what Europe does in an afternoon, he said. Indeed. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. So go and do check out the show notes and links and read the rest of that article. It goes a little bit deeper than what we're getting today. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow. right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.